She whispered. I'm dirty. The maid's toddler said those words so softly. The billionaire turned quickly toward his fiancée. Hey, stop scrolling for a second. Because what I am about to share with you began with 4 simple words whispered by a 3-year-old little girl, words that would change everything. She was so tiny, barely able to reach the kitchen counter, wearing a little dress with a small stain on the sleeve. She had her mother's eyes, big, brown, and honest in the way only a child's eyes can be. She walked up to this man, this powerful, wealthy 34-year-old billionaire, tugged on his suit jacket, and whispered something. Something so innocent, so heartbreaking, so pure that it made a grown man a man who had built empires and had never cried in public a single day in his life freeze in place. Then he turned slowly toward his fiancée, and the look on his face. You need to stay until the very end of this story to understand what happened next. Hey. Welcome back, everyone. If you're new here, I am so glad you found this channel, because we tell stories here that will shake your soul, warm your heart, and remind you what truly matters in this life. Before we begin, drop a comment right now and tell me where you are watching from. I read every single one. And if emotional, life-changing stories are your thing, hit that subscribe button. We drop new stories every week, and you do not want to miss what is coming. All right, let's get into this. Trust me, by the end of the story, you will feel something you have not felt in a long time. She never asked for pity. She only asked for a chance. Her name was Elena, and every single morning, before the sun had properly decided to rise, Elena was already on her knees. Not in prayer, though she did that too quietly in the corner of the small utility room where she kept her mop bucket and her worn-out rubber gloves. No. Elena was on her knees scrubbing the white marble floors of the most expensive penthouse in the city. Floors so polished you could see your own reflection in them. Floors that cost more per square foot than Elena earned in 3 months. She was 28 years old, a single mother, and she had been working as a live-in maid in the penthouse for almost 2 years. The penthouse belonged to Dominique Vale, 34 years old, sharp-jawed and dark-eyed, the kind of man whose name appeared in Forbes before he turned 30. He had built his technology empire from a college dorm room, expanded it across the continent, and now lived in a 12,000 square foot residence in the clouds, literally above the rest of the world. Elena had learned quickly. Mr. Vale liked things quiet, orderly, precise. He didn't make small talk. He didn't ask how your weekend was. He walked through the halls like a man permanently in the middle of solving an equation only he could see. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't warm. He was simply absent. Even when he was in the room, Elena respected that. She kept her head down, her work excellent, and her life completely separate from his. And then there was little Mia. Oh, Mia 3 years old, with 2 uneven pigtails that Elena could never quite get even, no matter how many times she tried. A laugh like wind chimes. She had a habit of dragging her favorite stuffed rabbit, a floppy grey thing named Mister, absolutely everywhere. Mia had been born into Elena's struggle. She had never known a father. She had grown up watching her mother work before dawn and after dusk. She had spent her first years in a daycare that smelled like disinfectant, and now she spent her days in the small service quarters at the back of the penthouse while Elena worked. She was too young to understand their situation, but she understood people the way children do, purely, instinctively, without the complicated filters adults built over years of disappointment. For months, Dominique Vale had barely noticed Mia existed. She was simply there, a small, quiet presence in the background of his enormous, complicated life. Sometimes he would hear her giggling behind a door. Sometimes he would see her little footprints on the floor Elena had just mopped. He never said anything, not once, and Elena made sure Mia understood the rules. Don't bother Mr. Vale. Don't touch his things. Stay in our space. Mia nodded every time. She was a good girl. She understood. But here's the thing about 3-year-olds. They understand rules. They just don't always understand why. And on a cold morning, while Dominique Vale was standing at the floor-to-ceiling window with his coffee, watching the city below, and Elena was in the kitchen preparing his breakfast. Mia slipped out, tiny bare feet on cold marble. Mr. clutched under one arm, eyes wide and curious. She padded silently down the long hallway, past the framed abstract paintings worth more than Elena's entire life savings, past the sleek black bookshelf lined with awards and accolades, and stopped right behind the tall man at the window. She looked up at him. He didn't notice. She reached out and tugged just once on the hem of his suit jacket. Dominic turned around slowly, genuinely startled. He looked down, and there she was, this tiny, dark-haired child with the most serious expression he had ever seen on a 3-year-old's face. He blinked. Yes? Mia leaned up on her tiptoes, her little face crumpling with something that looked almost like shame, and she whispered for words. She said, "I'm dirty." Dominic Vale went completely still. What would you do if a 3-year-old said that to you? Who do you think said it? Drop your thoughts below and keep watching, because the answer is not what you expect. Not everything that shines is gold, and not everyone who smiles is kind. Let's talk about Sienna, 27 years old. The kind of beautiful that made rooms go quiet when she entered. She had grown up in old money, attended the right schools, been photographed at the right events. She had met Dominic at a charity gala some time ago, and within weeks he had introduced her to his inner circle. A few months ago, he had proposed. The ring was 8 carats. The announcement made the society pages. On paper, Sienna was everything a man like Dominic was supposed to want. But there were things about Sienna that didn't make the society pages. Like the way her eyes tracked Elena whenever she moved through a room, a slow, evaluating look, like someone calculating the market value of a piece of furniture. Like the comment she made, light and laughing, about Elena's worn shoes, or the way she called her over to help in conversations when she thought Dominic wasn't close enough to hear. Like the afternoon just days before, when Sienna had found Mia wandering into the main living room, drawn by the sparkle of Sienna's designer handbags laid out across the couch. Mia had reached out, the way toddlers do, just wanting to touch something shiny and beautiful. And Sienna had pulled the bag away sharply, stood up straight, and looked down at this tiny, innocent 3-year-old with an expression that no child should ever have to see. "Don't touch that," she had said, her voice like eyes. Mia had blinked up at her, confused. "You're dirty," Sienna said flatly. "Go back to your room," 3 words said to a baby. Mia hadn't cried. She was too young, too stunned to process it fully. She had simply picked up Mr. the Rabbit, padded back to the service quarters, and sat quietly on her little mattress in the corner. Elena had heard none of this. She was in the kitchen. She was always in the kitchen or the hallway or the bathroom, always somewhere useful, always making herself indispensable so no one would ever have a reason to let her go. Because losing this job wasn't just inconvenient for Elena. Losing this job meant losing the roof over Mia's head. It meant going back to the shelter where they had lived for 4 months before this position came. Through back to the shared bathrooms and the fluorescent lights and the way Mia had cried every night for a week because she couldn't sleep through the noise. Elena would have scrubbed those marble floors with her bare hands before she let that happen again. So she saw nothing. She heard nothing. She kept her head down and she worked. And Mia, sweet, trusting, literal little Mia, carried those 3 words inside her small chest like a stone she didn't know how to put down. "You're dirty." She didn't understand what it meant exactly, but she understood the feeling it gave her, the way Sienna's eyes had looked at her, like she was less. And so, one cold morning, when she slipped out and found the tall man standing at the window, the quiet man who had never been mean to her, who had never even really seen her, something in her little heart decided to ask, because children ask. That's what they do when something hurts them and they don't have the words for it. They find an adult and they ask. She looked up at Dominic Vale and she whispered, "I'm dirty." And now Dominic was crouching down slowly, instinctively, to be at eye level with her. "Who said that, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice low, careful, almost unrecognizable from his usual boardroom tone. Mia pointed down the hallway toward the master bedroom where Sienna was sleeping. Have you ever witnessed someone treat a child with cruelty and felt powerless to stop it? How did it make you feel? Keep watching, because what Dominic does next will either break your heart or restore your faith in humanity. Some moments cost nothing, but they reveal everything. Dominic Vale had negotiated billion-dollar deals. He had looked venture capitalists dead in the eye and walked away from tables where everyone else was desperate to stay. He had fired executives, restructured companies, made decisions that affected thousands of livelihoods without so much as a tremor in his hand. He was not a man who rattled easily, but crouched on those expensive marble floors, looking into the enormous brown eyes of a 3-year-old girl who was looking back at him with absolute trust. He felt something shift inside his chest. Something tectonic. Something old. She said you were dirty, he repeated quietly. Mia nodded very seriously. Her pigtails bobbed. Was it someone here in this house? Another nod. She clutched Mr. tightly. Dominic breathed slowly through his nose. He sat fully down on the floor in his $3,000 suit and crossed his legs like he was in kindergarten circle time. Mia blinked at him, surprised by this, and then cautiously sat down across from him. Can I tell you something? He said. She nodded. You're not dirty. He kept his voice even and gentle. Okay, you're not. Not even a little bit. Mia looked at him for a long moment, processing this with the gravity only a toddler can give to a sentence. Then she said, but she made a mean face. Dominic felt something in his jaw tighten. I know, he said quietly. That wasn't right. He didn't know exactly what had happened. He didn't have the full story yet, but he had enough. He stood up, straightened his jacket, and walked quietly down the hallway. Elena was just coming out of the kitchen with his breakfast tray when she saw him, saw the direction he was walking, saw the expression on his face, and froze. Mr. Vale? Her voice was careful, professional. Breakfast is, leave it, he said, not unkindly but firmly. He knocked once on the master bedroom door and opened it. Sienna was sitting up in bed, phone in hand, hair perfectly arranged even at this hour in the way of someone who had always been watched and had never fully stopped performing for an audience. She smiled when she saw him, the practiced, luminous smile that had graced 100 photographs. Good morning, she said warmly. Come back to bed. It's early. Did you tell the child she was dirty? The smile didn't fall. It shifted just slightly, just enough. What? Elena's daughter. Mia. Did you say that to her? Sienna laughed a light, dismissive sound. Dominic, she's 3 years old. I know how old she is. She's 3 years old, Sienna. His voice was quiet, controlled, more frightening than if he had shouted. She came to me this morning and told me someone said she was dirty. She pointed to this room. Sienna's expression curdled just slightly into something less polished. You're seriously upset about something a toddler told you. She set her phone down. Dominic, the girl is the maid's child. I was protecting my things. She's a baby. Sienna stopped herself, recalibrated. The practiced smile returned, softer now, conciliatory. Okay, I may have been too harsh. I'll apologize to the little girl if that's what you want. I'll apologize to Elena. When did this happen? Silence. When did you say it to her? Sienna looked away at Hell, so small anyone else would have missed it. Recently, she said finally. It was a moment I barely even. I'd forgotten about it for a week. This child had been carrying those words alone in a house full of people, and Elena didn't know. Dominic walked out of the room. Do you think Dominic is about to do what you think he is? And do you believe people like Sienna can truly change? Or do moments like this reveal who someone always was? Tell me in the comments, and don't you dare turn this off. The people who protect everyone else are usually the ones nobody is protecting. Elena was in the kitchen when Dominic came to find her. She had her back to him, washing the breakfast dishes she would set out again once she cleaned them. Her hands moving in the practiced, automatic way of someone who has cleaned so many dishes the motion lives in the muscle rather than the mind. She heard his footsteps and turned, already straightening, already professionally neutral. Mr. Vale, Can I get you? Sit down, Elena. She blinked. In 2 years, he had never said that to her. She wasn't someone who sat in this kitchen. She was someone who worked in it. I'm fine standing, sir. I just need to, Elena. He pulled out a chair from the kitchen island quietly, simply, and waited. She sat down slowly, her hands folded in her lap, her face arranged into the expression of a woman bracing for termination, because that's where her mind went immediately. That's the place a woman in her position always lives one conversation away from catastrophe. She was already calculating how many weeks of savings she had, how long until she'd have to call the shelter, whether they'd have Mia's size in the donation bins this time of year. I need to tell you something, Dominic said. He sat across from her again, simply, without ceremony. And I want you to know before I tell you that you have done nothing wrong. Nothing. Elena waited. He told her what Mia had said, where she pointed, what Sienna had confirmed. He watched Elena's face as he spoke. He expected tears. He expected anger. What he saw was something quieter and more devastating than both. He saw recognition. It moved across her face slowly, a dawning, exhausted recognition, like a woman hearing the name of an illness she had suspected for a long time, but been afraid to confirm because Sienna had never said those words directly to Elena. She had been smarter than that, more careful. She had operated in the register of the casual comment, the slightly too long pause, the look that was deniable without ever being anything other than what it was. But Elena had felt it every day. She had felt herself being assessed and found lacking in ways that had nothing to do with the quality of her work. She had told herself she was imagining it. She had told herself to be grateful. She had told herself she could not afford to be sensitive. She had kept her head down. And while she kept her head down, it had reached her daughter. A single tear slipped down Elena's cheek. Just one. She caught it immediately, pressed the back of her hand against her eye, looked away. I'm sorry, she whispered, and it broke him a little that she apologized, that the reflex was still to apologize. You have nothing to apologize for, Dominic said. His voice was rougher than he intended. Mia shouldn't have been in the main rooms. I told her, Elena said. He waited until she looked at him. Stop. She stopped. Where is she now? He asked. She's in our room. She usually naps around this time. Can I see her? Elena stared at him. Yes, of course. He followed her to the small service quarters. A room he realized with a sharp twist of shame never once entered into years. He had known abstractly that Elena lived here. He had signed the employment paperwork that included accommodation. He had never seen it. It was clean. Elena had made sure of that. But it was small. One bed, one small mattress on the floor beside it for Mia. A plastic drawer unit, a tiny window that looked out at a concrete wall. Mia was curled up with Mr. the Rabbit, almost asleep. She cracked one eye open when they came in, saw Dominic, and smiled the unguarded, unperformed smile of a toddler who has simply decided someone is safe. Hi, she said. Hi, Mia, he said quietly. She held up Mr. This is Mr. He looks like a very good rabbit. She nodded, satisfied, and closed her eyes again. Dominic stood in that small room for a moment that felt longer than it was. Then he walked back out, and something had changed in him. Something fundamental. Something he would not have been able to name precisely, but that felt like a door he had kept closed for a very long time swinging open. Have you ever realized too late that something was happening right under your roof? Something you should have seen sooner? That guilt is one of the heaviest things a person can carry. Keep watching. He had everything the world said a man should want, and he had never felt more empty that evening. Dominic did not go to his usual study to work. He did something he hadn't done in longer than he could remember. He sat still. He sat in the living room in the dark. No laptop, no phone, no calls to take or decisions to make, and he thought. He thought about Mia's face that morning, the small, solemn seriousness of it. She said I'm dirty, not she was mean to me, not I don't like her, just that. The pure, simple reporting of a wound she didn't have language for yet. He thought about Elena, the way she had reflexively apologized. The 2 years she had worked in this house excellently, quietly, invisibly, while he had floated through the marble halls above her, entirely enclosed in his own world. He thought about Sienna. He had loved her. He thought, or he had loved the idea of her, the ease of her, the way she fit perfectly into the architecture of his life without requiring him to rearrange anything. She was beautiful and bright, and she moved through his world without friction. But he had never once heard her apologize naturally. He had never seen her be kind to someone when it wasn't being watched. He had never, and this landed now with sudden, heavy clarity, heard her laugh at something genuinely funny rather than strategically. Who was Sienna when she thought no one was looking? He had his answer. He had gotten it from a 3-year-old with pigtails. When Sienna came to find him that evening, she was dressed beautifully, carrying 2 glasses of wine, the performance of reconciliation, carefully staged. "I think we should talk," she said, her voice warm and reasonable, the voice of a woman who knew how to manage a situation. "I think we should," Dominic agreed. He didn't take the wine. She sat across from him and she talked. She was good at talking. She built her case carefully. She'd had a stressful week. She hadn't been sleeping well. The wedding planning was overwhelming. She was simply on edge. And she would absolutely apologize to Elena. She would apologize to Mia. She would make it right. She talked for a long time. Dominic listened. And then he asked her a question. "Why didn't you tell me when it happened?" Sienna paused. "I didn't think it was." "You didn't think I needed to know that you'd said something cruel to a 3-year-old child in my home? It wasn't." Cruel is a strong word. That child carried those words for a week alone. She was 3 years old, and she was carrying that alone. He stopped, looked at her. "You didn't tell me. And when I asked you this morning, your first response was to minimize it." Sienna's composure cracked slightly. "People say things they don't mean. You meant it," he said gently. No accusation. Almost sadly. "I think you meant it at the time. You looked at a small child, and you felt contempt. That wasn't an accident. The room was very quiet. I think," Dominic said slowly, "that I've been building something with you that I should have looked at more carefully before now. I think I've been choosing comfort over honesty for a very long time." He paused. "I don't want to do that anymore." Sienna stared at him. "Are you?" Her voice shifted. The warmth gone now. Something colder and more real beneath it. "Are you breaking off our engagement because of the maid's child?" Dominic looked at her for a long moment. "I'm ending our engagement," he said quietly, "because of who I just found out you are. Mia just happened to be the one who told me. Have you ever had a moment where someone revealed themselves to you so completely that you could never unsee it? When the mask comes off, can you go back? Let me know your thoughts. We're almost at the end, and I promise you, the final section will leave you completely speechless. Some men build companies. The rare ones build something that actually lasts." Not long after Sienna left, taking the 8-carat ring and the designer luggage, and leaving behind a silence that Dominic found, to his surprise, entirely bearable. Something unexpected happened. He knocked on the service quarters door. Elena opened it. She was in her off-duty clothes. A soft grey sweater, hair loose, a cookbook open on the bed behind her. She looked startled, then immediately professional. The mask coming up, the straight back, the careful expression. "Mr. Vale is something I was wondering," he said, and stopped. He was bad at this. He had always been bad at this. "I was wondering if you and Mia would like to have dinner out here." He gestured toward the main dining area. "With me?" Elena stared at him. "There's no—" "I'm not asking you to work," he said, slightly awkward in the way of a man who is very competent at most things and completely unequipped for vulnerability. "I just thought the table's large, and I usually eat alone." Behind Elena, Mia's head appeared around her mother's knee. She looked up at Dominic. "Can Mr. come?" "Absolutely," Dominic said. It was the strangest dinner he had eaten in years. Mia sat in a chair with a stack of books underneath her to reach the table. Mr. the Rabbit was given his own small spot at the table's edge. She ate exactly 4 pieces of pasta and declared herself all full while there was clearly room for more. then proceeded to tell Dominic a 15-minute story about a bird she had seen from the window that day, with a level of narrative detail that frankly impressed him. He listened to every word. Elena watched him listening, and she felt something loosen inside her. Something she had been holding so tightly for so long that she had forgotten it was possible to let go of it. Dinners became a quiet habit. Not every night, but enough. He noticed things, small things. The way Elena's cookbook had handwritten notes in the margins. The way she sang to Mia when she thought no one could hear. The way she laughed when she forgot to be careful, full and unguarded and real. He started asking her things about her life, about Mia's father, gone before Mia was born. She told him without bitterness, just fact, about what she had wanted once before survival had become the primary project. She had wanted to study nutrition of all things. She had a gift for it, the kind that came from a lifetime of making almost nothing into something nourishing. She had started a degree twice and had to stop twice because life had different plans. Dominic listened to this the way he listened to business problems, not with sympathy exactly, but with the focused, practical attention of a man identifying what was needed and how to provide it. Several months later, Elena received a letter. It was from the city's top culinary and nutrition college. Her tuition for a full 4-year scholarship had been anonymously funded. She knew immediately who had done it. She went to find him. He was in his study. She stood in the doorway holding the letter, and he looked up, and she said, "Dominic," just his name, for the first time, and he said simply, "You should have been able to do this a long time ago." She started the program that fall. A hired nanny, thoroughly vetted and extraordinarily warm, came to care for Mia during classes. Elena's days divided between lectures and the penthouse, between learning and living, between the person she was becoming and the person she had almost forgotten she could be. Mia, for her part, was thriving. She had a bedroom now, a real one, with a window that looked at the sky instead of a concrete wall, and a shelf for Mr. and 17 other stuffed animals who had joined the family. She called Dominic because she had never been able to say Mr. Vale correctly, and nobody had corrected her on a beautiful afternoon, with golden light streaming through the windows and the city sprawling quietly below. Mia climbed up onto the couch beside Dominic while he was reading. She pulled his book down with both hands, looked him very seriously in the face, and announced, "You're my person." He looked at her for a moment. Then he said, "Yeah, you're mine too." Elena, standing in the kitchen doorway, heard this. She turned back to the stove before either of them could see her face, but she was smiling. The kind of smile that comes from somewhere so deep it doesn't need an audience. A 3-year-old girl with pigtails and a stuffed rabbit walked up to one of the most powerful men in the world, and with 4 small words, she dismantled a lie he had been living and built a door to something true. We spend so much of our lives performing the version of ourselves we think the world requires. We choose the comfortable over the honest. We look past the small rooms in our own houses. We convince ourselves that as long as we're not cruel, we're kind. But kindness isn't passive. It sees. It asks. It sits down on the floor in a $3,000 suit and listens. The most powerful thing Dominic Vale ever built wasn't a company. It was the willingness to stop, to crouch down, to hear what a child was actually saying. And here is the question I want you to carry with you today. Who in your life has been trying to tell you something small, something quiet, something that keeps coming back that you haven't allowed yourself to hear yet? If this story moved you, if it made you feel something real, then let's make a deal. Hit that like button. It literally takes 1 second, and it tells the world this kind of story matters. Leave a comment and tell me what part of this story hit you hardest. Was it Mia? Elena? The moment Dominic sat on the floor? I want to know. Subscribe and ring the bell, because more stories like this are coming, and you deserve to be here for every one of them. And if you want another story that will stay with you long after it's over, your next one is waiting right on your screen. Don't scroll past it.